Hi, Derryfield. RTR here, broadcasting to you live from late Wednesday night, where I do not yet know who has won the presidency in the election of 2020. In the future of Thursday afternoon, perhaps you do know the answer to this question, in which case you can let me know. But in the meantime, I want to talk about something else. And if you're like anyone who is in my classes who I saw today, you've probably spent the whole day clicking refresh a million times on maps of the Electoral College. But I hate to break it to you, no matter how many times you click refresh, you're having no impact on the results. In fact, nobody can. Right, so maybe you were knocking on doors, maybe you were phone banking, maybe you were texting, maybe you or your parents gave some money to one of the candidates. But at this point, you can't affect the outcome. So all that's left to do is wait, and we might have to wait a little while. There might be court challenges. There might be mail-in ballots outstanding. It takes a long time to count them. They got to unwrap them. They got to check the signatures. It's going to take a while. Maybe by tomorrow afternoon, when you're watching this, you already know the outcome. Maybe you don't. Either way, that's not really what's important now because there's nothing you can do about it. So instead, I want to talk about what you can do, and I want to direct your attention towards the future. And in order to do that, we need to go back a little bit into the past. And I want to talk to you about an election season, one that's extremely bitter, between two rival candidates who each believe that the other one is not only wrong, but dangerous for America. And obviously, as you can guess, based on my tone and based on the fact that this is a trope that comes up all the time, I'm not talking about the election of 2020. I'm actually talking about a bunch of elections in American history, frankly, but in this case, I want to talk about the election of 1800, okay, and I want to talk about the election of 1824. I know, very, very historical, lots of powdered wigs, etc., but they are actually important, and they illustrate a point that I think is important that I want you to think about. So let's start with 1800. And this election between two guys you probably heard of. You've got John Adams and you've got Thomas Jefferson. And John Adams and Thomas Jefferson are running an extremely bitter campaign, one of the most vicious in American history. In the campaign, John Adams basically says Thomas Jefferson is a dangerous atheist who will destroy religion and dethrone God if he is elected president. On the other hand, you've got Thomas Jefferson saying about John Adams that he is a dangerous monarchist who will place you into tyranny and destroy America by becoming king when he is reelected as president. And so it's a pretty vicious campaign, right? Both of them are basically arguing that the victory of the other will destroy America. And it's really close, too. It's really close. And this is a moment where something really important happens. And it's not that it's the most vicious campaign, although that's kind of interesting. What's important is that before 1800, the government, the federal government, had always been controlled by one party, the Federalists. And for the first time, their opponents, the Democratic Republicans, get elected into office, and they're going to control the federal government. Thomas Jefferson wins this election. But there's a moment where people wonder, what will happen? Will the Federalists and John Adams use the army, for example, to seize control of the government and refuse to give it up? Because remember, they think that Thomas Jefferson is a dangerous atheist who will dethrone God. But they don't. Simple as that. Not doing something becomes very important. And this becomes known as the Revolution of 1800. And here's what's important about it. Here's the takeaway. This is what America is about. And it proves the system works. If John Adams doesn't give up power in 1800, the American experiment falls apart. The system doesn't work. We can't pass power from one group of people to another peacefully, but it happens. The peaceful transfer of power is, if anything else, what the United States is about. So that's one example. That's where it starts. The other example I want to give you is the election of 1824. Also involves someone you've probably heard of, Andrew Jackson. It also involves some other people, John Quincy Adams, who you might have heard of. He's the son of John Adams. It also involves a guy named Henry Clay. There are some other people as well. But the point being that in this election, unlike today, there's not just two candidates who have a chance of winning. There's actually four. And nobody wins. Whereas in this election, it seems pretty clear somebody's going to get a majority in the Electoral College. Nobody does in 1824. And so what happens? Well, those of you who are in civics could probably tell me that it goes to the House of Representatives, and the House of Representatives decides. Now, in the House of Representatives, all bets are off. They can do whatever they want. Andrew Jackson won the plurality of votes in this election. That is, he won the most, but not the majority. Right? So he won more than anyone else, but not the majority, so he's not president. And in the House, there is what the Jackson people call a corrupt bargain. And the corrupt bargain is this. Henry Clay, who pretty clearly didn't win, he wants something. So he wants to be Secretary of State. And he says to John Quincy Adams, John Quincy Adams, I will give you my extra votes if you make me Secretary of State. John Quincy Adams says, excellent, I agree. Henry Clay becomes Secretary of State. John Quincy Adams becomes president. And Andrew Jackson, who won the most votes, gets nothing. Which is pretty annoying if you're Andrew Jackson. It's even more annoying to all of Andrew Jackson's supporters who really like Andrew Jackson. And so there is, again, a moment where people wonder, Andrew Jackson, a famous war hero, will he commit violence? The election's been stolen in his mind. He should have been president, but he's not. And Andrew Jackson, despite the fact that he's like killed a bunch of people in duels and is like a pretty violent guy, in this case, he doesn't use violence. So good job, Andrew Jackson, not using violence in this case. And instead, here's what he does, and this is the important takeaway. So again, let me signal to you what's important. The takeaway is this. Andrew Jackson and his supporters accept the outcome. And what they do next is the other important part of the peaceful transfer of power. They don't give up, right? They don't decide, oh, well, I guess it's all over now. Instead, they begin organizing. They begin organizing their party from the top down, and they prepare for the next election. And in 1828, Andrew Jackson becomes president. So that's what I want to leave you with. I want you to think about what this means. What does this mean for us at this moment? Well, it means a couple of things. One, it means if you're upset with the outcome of the process has something to say about that. Right? If you're unhappy with the outcome, there are things you can do. You can organize for the next election. 2 years, Congress. Right? You can work to take control of Congress. You can get your voice heard by your representatives, by your senators, by writing, by calling, by emailing. And you can protest peacefully. Right? The system is ready for a situation where you don't like the outcome. But what's important in both of these cases, and what I hope you'll take away is this. What's important in a democracy, and what makes America America, is our ability to let the process unfold, to let the legal process happen. And then most importantly, when we don't like the outcome, to accept it. Because the game's not over. There'll be plenty more rounds, and if this one didn't turn out the way you hoped, you always have a chance in the next one. And so that's what I want to leave you with. I want you to think about what's so important about that peaceful transfer of power. Because it doesn't happen everywhere, and didn't have to happen here, but it does.